I'm not going to lie. Up until this point, Arizona has shocked me, and I was a little bit nervous about the game this weekend against Iowa State. But after taking a deeper dive, looking a little bit more into that team out west, I'm not concerned at all. Iowa State's going to dominate the Wildcats. We're talking about why today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day, making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Be sure to hit subscribe down below, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform. Helps us prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Every subscription gets us a little bit closer, and you guys are killing it right now. Shout out to every single one of you. Today, we have a game preview. We are talking about Iowa State taking on Arizona at home, and we're going to do it in three parts. We're going to talk about bird's eye view, my initial thoughts on Arizona and their season thus far at 3-0. Then we'll zoom in a little bit more. We'll talk about where can Iowa State win this game? What can they do to actually take home the hardware, if you will? And then we'll finally talk about head coach Matt Campbell, OC Taylor Mauser, what they said in their midweek press availability. We'll talk about, obviously, injury status of some players. We'll talk about the team's mental, where are they at right now, coming off of the bye. And I do have a golden nugget, so stick around. I have I think a nugget is the perfect word for it, as far as little news piece for you that kind of came out yesterday. Not going to talk about it a whole lot. We're talking football today, but I do want to get your guys' thoughts on it. So we'll talk about it. Comments down below at Nick_Marv on Twitter. Let's open this discourse because I do want to hear your guys' thoughts. But first, before we get that far, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Let's talk about Arizona football versus Iowa State football in Jack Trice Stadium on Saturday night at a whiteout. This is going to be an electric atmosphere. I went to Baylor last season, and boy, oh boy, was that fun. I mean, Pack the Jack was in full effect. It was loud. It was, oh my gosh. And it did help that game was super fun too. But boy, whiteout at Jack Trice at this point is starting to rival Beaver Stadium. I mean, it is really starting to get on Penn State's level, how electric it is. And I know that's going to get clipped and thrown around. I'm cool with it. I completely feel that way. I've been to both, believe it or not. And I'm not going to lie, Iowa State kind of killed it last season against Baylor. So look out, Arizona, for that. But looking at what they've done this season thus far, I think the best spot to start is against Kansas State. Now, we can talk about the rest of their two wins, I suppose, at some point. We'll probably mention them in this segment. But I went back and watched Kansas State versus Arizona. I don't love that both of these teams are the Wildcats, but you know what? We're going to move on from that. Arizona wins 23-17 over Kansas State, a team that is getting a lot of, I think the right word is hate. I think Kansas State is getting a lot of hate right now. Coming into the season, a Big 12 championship, favorite essentially by all measures. Now 1-3 after this game, and Arizona, a team that I had picked to finish really close to the bottom of the Big 12, now 3-0, and looks like they could be a real danger. What's going on here? This game is completely turned on its head. I don't understand. What am I looking at? Well, I'll go and watch the actual game. And I did watch, definitely the most important parts. And we're going to do a super deep dive on all of the plays that Arizona has essentially played tomorrow and Friday. That's what those days are for. But for now, we're looking at bird's eye. And I don't know how Kansas State didn't win this game. I don't know. Arizona did their best to hand them this game, just based on what I have seen so far. And I'm going to go back and rewatch this game in its entirety and their other two games. We'll see where Arizona's at from that perspective. But right now, Kansas State should be 2-2 right now. Arizona, really sloppy, especially on special teams. But Kansas State was worse. I mean, it's like pouring out a glass of milk and then your quote-unquote opponent spills the entire fridge worth. Like, it was just terrible from Kansas State. I don't know how they didn't win this game. I'm going to be completely honest. And I got to give Arizona credit where it's due. They did hold Avery Johnson to only 88 yards through the air. And if you don't count the 31-yard pass to Jace Brown, that's what, 57 57 yards through the air is just not going to get it done. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, you're going to have to do more than that, I think. And they almost got away with it. They almost did. So I do feel better about Iowa State in this matchup after watching that. I will be completely candid with you. That is my bird's eye view. Is I now feel a lot better. My initial thoughts on Arizona, this team flies around. They play like their hair is on fire and there is no tomorrow. And that's a dangerous team to face. You never want to go up against someone who's like super, super calculated, but I almost think it's worse when you're going up against, and I'm not saying this is Arizona, but a team that has no plan and just literally flies around is the best way to say it. Like we were the piranhas essentially in high school. We weren't, that wasn't our mascot, but the defense was like piranhas. Like they all just like swim out of control. It's a feeding frenzy on whoever has the ball. That's how I picture Arizona. There were plays where their goal was literally just to saw Kansas State players in half, just to cut them in half. Like that was their only goal on that tackle. It wasn't to bring him down. It was literally hit him as hard as humanly possible. That's a little scary. I'm not going to lie to you. But overall, outside of that, like Arizona is a very beatable team. I don't want that to come across as this like, this team is going to be super hard. I think they're going to be a challenge. They're in the Big 12, but I don't see this being a problem. I thought there were a lot of mistakes against Kansas State that Iowa State would be able to capitalize on a lot better than I keep having to use Kansas State because I can't go to the Wildcats. Like I said, not a huge fan of that, but Kansas State just did not capitalize and made bigger mistakes themselves. Now, Arizona, the rest of this season, or I suppose prior to the Kansas State game, beat Hawaii 40-6 and beat Weber State 48-3. It is worth noting that Kansas State, the first, I would say, relatively real team that they face, they only score 23. Now, in that same vein, you have to remember they did miss 3 field goals. They went 3 for 6. So that's a part of being sloppy, but that's also 9 points left on the board. So if we're going to play the game of Iowa State probably should have won, 35-17 or whatever it was over Kansas State, you got to play the same game and at least give Arizona those field goals. 9 points would be 32. So they'd win at 32-17 or whatever. So if we want to play that game, that's where I'm at there. I think offensively, Arizona does show a lot of promise, and we'll talk about that, like I said, more in obviously the next segment, but down the road the rest of this week as well. I think that there's upside for Arizona on offense. I think it's something that Iowa State's defense can handle. I think defensively, other than just flying around, they're going to cause problems, but they're also going to get beat. They're going to give up plays. And then Iowa State just has to capitalize on those plays. The best way to look at it is, do you get in the end zone or do you get tackled at the 10? Because Arizona's defense is good enough that it'll be a problem on the 10. But if they're going to let you go wide open into the open field, let's get into the end zone. Let's not have to play with, from the 10. So very good defense in Arizona, but also not always. It seems like at times they're just okay with giving up big plays because they are so fly to the ball, out of control type of just sprinting, cutting people in half type of defense. Sometimes you're going to miss, and sometimes those are going to be huge breaks. My initial thoughts on pass versus run defense, I think Arizona's probably better through the air. Just holding Avery Johnson, to 88 yards, 13 of 29 on the game. I can't remember what the number was at halftime, but Avery Johnson had some ridiculous, like maybe 15 yards or something like that, right around the halftime mark. Look, Kansas State struggled through the air. There's no other way to put it. And they had their 75-yard run was on the ground. Like, I think it's between the two. I'm going with Arizona stronger through the air. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing necessarily quite yet at this point for Iowa State. We'll talk about it a little bit more in this second segment. But my bird's eye view, final seconds here, I feel better about Iowa State against Arizona than I did even just 24 hours ago. That's how I'm going to put it. But we are going to talk a little bit more about how Iowa State can beat this Arizona team on these initial thoughts. Really, it's kind of Initial Thought Wednesday, so I can't wait to talk about that here in just 1 second. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls, and you feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Nappa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting, and you link all your accounts in minutes. See clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and you finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Personally, I am a huge fan of the ability to link up with a partner and really go about your savings and investments that way. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That is 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. So we took a little bit of a bird's eye view. Who is Arizona in this first segment today on Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. But let's really talk about where Iowa State can get them. Okay, now this is relatively early on in the process, okay? We've got a whole 2 days to go. Let's not get too far out in front of the wagon here, okay? Let's try to reel it in a little bit. Keep it relatively realistic. I think Iowa State's going to dominate this game, and I think it really isn't going to come down to anything heroic. I think Iowa State just kind of needs to play their game, and they'll get it done. I've got 4 points in front of me that I want to talk about, but honestly, after watching the Kansas State-Arizona game, I feel really good about where Iowa State is at. Now, like I said, I will watch all of their games up until this point. Still early on enough in the season where I can do that, and I can really get a feel of this Arizona team and where Iowa State is significantly better than them. And boy, tomorrow is going to be a doozy. You're going to want to come back for that one. But for now, I think the biggest thing that Iowa State can do to win this game against Arizona is just stay on schedule. Okay? You don't need to find yourself with a huge chunk of yardage needed on second down or third and long or whatever the case is, and you need some heroic play if you want to get back in the drive, or you're just basically playing field position. I don't think Iowa State's going to win this game if they find themselves in a lot of third and longs. Now, I understand that that's like, duh. Like, you don't win a lot of games if your average third down distance is 8 to 10 yards. I understand that. But at the same time, I don't think Iowa State fans especially, but also players, can get upset with 2-3 yard gains. In this game, you kind of have to just roll with that. You're going to break a few. As I said, I think Arizona flies downhill to the extent of it actually can be a detriment. So a lot of their plays are they blew up Kansas State quite a few times. I don't know. I don't have the TFL's number right in front of me. Actually, I might. Where is it? TFLs. They had 9 TFLs against Kansas State. They're going to get back into the backfield behind the line of scrimmage and cause some havoc. They're going to. At the same time, they're going to give up big plays. They just are. I don't think Kansas State was the best example of that, but they certainly will. Just based on what I'm seeing. Those are going to come and go. The rest of the game, Iowa State needs to stay on schedule. And I know that to me, this feels like disaster. Like when I wrote that down, stay on schedule, I was like, yeah, that's really intuitive. That's great. That makes sense. Let's rock with that. Then I was like, wait a second. This just sounds like disaster. This sounds like Taylor Mauser going out and trying to scheme up 2-yard run, 2-yard run, 2-yard run, go for it on fourth down, pick up 4. Like, no, I don't want that to happen. Let's actually pump the brakes on that. I don't think that's ideal. I don't like when Taylor Mauser goes out there, and we talked about this coming into the season. Like, don't try to scheme up some crazy, weird, like super methodical play chart. Like, just play the game. Just go out there, see what they're giving you, play into your hands where you're stronger, basically play what they're giving you. And basically the point of this is just don't be upset with 2 to 3 yard gains. Those are going to be a little bit of the name of the game in this one. Don't go out there, Mauser, I know you're watching this. Don't go out there and scheme up like, all right, we're designing, we want 3.5 yards on this play. Then this one, we're going to only get 2, but it's going to put us in a position where we're basically in 3rd and 5, and we're going to have them guessing. So they won't see the run coming. And then we're actually going to run it again. And we can really just work our way methodically down the field. Like, no, don't do that. Don't do that, Mauser. Just play the game. I do think Iowa State needs to be successful through the air in this one to some extent. But I think that on the ground, it's going to be the key. The next point that I have, I'm trying to keep this moving. I can't let this get too out of hand. Iowa State has to win the special teams game. Kansas State absolutely lost the special teams battle against Arizona, and it was honestly sad to see. It felt a little bit like watching Iowa State special teams at times. Now, I hate to say it, but even this year, Iowa State just hasn't been the best in special teams. Kyle Conradi has been unreal, and I don't necessarily believe in the whole Iowa no kick catch interference situation. Look, I'm just going to leave that alone. For the most part, it's been relatively okay. It's been okay. I'm not going to lie to you. There have been better years, not very many. There have been worse years, probably way more. So I'm going to kind of move on from that. I think if Iowa State wins this special teams game by essentially not making mistakes, they're going to win this game. Now, obviously, the biggest point of emphasis, the biggest talking point in this is going to be Kyle Conradi. We'll talk about this a little bit more, not really so much. We're kind of bringing it up right now in the final segment was when I was going to bring this up, but Kyle Conradi appears to be week to week, according to Matt Campbell. Now, how many weeks are we going week to week is the question for me. But it sounds like it's like some sort of strain, some sort of leg issue, not anything too major is how Matt Campbell is basically phrasing it. So I don't think we're going to miss Kyle the rest of the season per se, but we're definitely not going to have him against Arizona. That is a fact. We know that. So while I love Chase Smith and he's our guy and you're going to get behind him too. I know it. I can sense it. Even if you're on the fence right now, I can hear it in your little eardrums, which is crazy. I know. It's crazy. They're saying, yeah, Chase is the guy. Chase is going to win this game. He's going to succeed in this game. I know that he's not Kyle Conradi, but if they just get it done on special teams, you make the kicks that you're put in or that are put in front of you. You just don't fumble it essentially on punt. Like, we can get this done. I like that. The special teams is basically just don't lose it there. I believe Aiden Flora will be coming back. We'll talk about that in the third segment. The next position I have Iowa State winning this game in is from the linebacker position. I think that this is probably more of a later week topic of conversation, but the linebackers are going to be key for Iowa State in this one. And we've got the linebackers to do it. Like, I'm just pretty much going to leave it there. We'll talk about it more tomorrow and Friday, but we've got linebacker talent. And I think they're going to win it through those guys. I really do on defense. So come back tomorrow and Friday to hear more of my explanation on that because we're running out of time here. Rocco's legs is my final point out of these four. I think that Rocco has the ability to extend plays. We haven't seen a ton of designed run. I guess I shouldn't say I think. I know he has the ability to extend plays. But we haven't really seen him on a lot of designed runs. Mauser was talking about kind of, we see all these kind of plays around the NFL, around college, like getting a little creative with it. We'll talk about that in the third segment. I just want to see a general run play from Rocco Becht. I think that they can open it up against Arizona if they get that done. Will they? I don't know. I don't know if it's just that I play too much college football, the NCAA game, but it always makes me nervous running with quarterbacks. Rocco on designed runs, though, could be a huge part of Iowa State's offense in this one against Arizona. And if they do, I think that that's a recipe for success. Like I said, we'll break down more of exactly why I think that in tomorrow and Friday's episode. So come back for that. But I want to see Rocco with probably, more than negative 16 rushing yards, which is what Avery Johnson had against Arizona. I want to see him probably closer to like 30 or 40. And I think that'll be a great position for Iowa State to find themselves in. Speaking of positions, Let's talk about the two most important positions kind of right now. Not well, two of the three most important. Matt Campbell and Taylor Mauser, the OC and the HC, the head coach. We'll talk about them and what they said yesterday coming up right here after this. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel. It fits however I want to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or if I'm a little late to the party, which sometimes I am, I can jump in live as the action unfolds and do it that way. It makes every game more exciting. Not that you necessarily need it with Iowa State games, but boy, does it bump it up, whether you're watching your team or if you're just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to get a little bit more energy added to those Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. We had some media availability last week. Taylor Mauser and Matt Campbell jumped in front of the podiums. I saw them actually hop, I think is probably the better term, up in front of the microphone and have some words to say. They came right out of their mouths, and we're going to talk about it here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Iowa State, I think, is probably going to win the Super Bowl this year, but why? That's the question. That is the question. I think a part of that equation is Taylor Mauser. Now, Taylor Mauser was the first one I watched of the two. You can go back and watch Matt Campbell speak first, but I think that's like reading Harry Potter backwards to front. I went OC to head coach here. The biggest thing that I was looking for, and we did get kind of relatively answered, was how is Iowa State going to handle no Kyle Conradi? I did talk about it on Monday. I think that just means the team's going to be a little bit more aggressive. And I think that that is exactly what Taylor Mauser said without explicitly quoting me. When asked about, how does play calling and aggressiveness kind of look with Kyle Conradi on the team, how's it affected with him out? He said it's influenced a lot by Kyle Conradi. Wow, shocker. Yeah, I know. But the biggest thing that he said was like, you don't have to do too much once you get into field goal range. We can play to advance the ball, but also position it. Look, the way I interpreted this was once we get with like over the 50, once we get within Kyle's range, we're pretty much just like, and I know this isn't what he meant. This isn't what he said, but in some level it was, look, we just need to not turn it over. We can advance the ball a little bit here, but we've basically got 3. If we end up with 7, we end up with 7. If we end up with 3, great, we're already here. That's how I interpreted it. Is that how he meant it? I'm almost certain no. And like I said, Taylor, I know you're watching this. Coach Mauser, I know you're watching this. I'm sorry, but that's just how it came out. It's just how it literally sounded. And so I do wonder, will the likely increase in aggressiveness be a positive or a negative for Iowa State? Well, I would imagine likely more positive. I think the play calling, just not even like on 4th down or on 3rd and 2 or whatever the case is, 3rd and 8 even. I'm not saying that we're going to get like more deep shots or like more aggressive on 4th down instead of kicking it, just going for it. That's not the type of aggression I'm talking about. I'm talking about just general play calling on 2nd and 6, right? And I did just say I want to see them stay on schedule. I understand that, but I wonder if the way that Mauser is going to attack this is to be more aggressive in that kind of gray, that alumni zone, that gray area of the field, to effectively kind of like boom or bust it from there. Obviously, it's not that, but I do wonder if that's what's going to happen. That was kind of the vibes that I got. It felt a little bit in some ways like, all right, the chains are off. We don't have to just like kind of inch our way up, play for the field goal a little bit at this point of the field. We're able to just kind of go and play offense. That's how it felt, probably interpreting that entirely wrong. The other big conversation topic of Taylor Mauser's press conference was talking about the offensive line and how we're really seeing some rotation there to keep the guys fresh. I think that's a great call. I have no problems with that. There are some questions with like Boniface at center. Like, are we rotating our center out? That feels like something we don't do a whole lot. But Iowa State, Mauser, McCampbell seem to have no problem with that. Seems like that is a totally normal thing. If that's what we got to do, hey, that's what we got to do. Offensive line is going to need to be fresh against Arizona, period. End of story. All right, let's switch over to Campbell because this is where I think a lot of people are more interested. It sounds like Gabe, Flora, Willick, and Klosterman are going to be back. And now I don't have that in direct quotes here. So it just kind of the way that Campbell was talking about it sounds like those guys are going to be back, which is exciting. I think that's really good news. I don't want to see any of them like push the return, but boy, Flora back on that field just from an entertainment standpoint at the very least is exciting. I mean, that kid can fly. He is literally made of electricity. I am pretty sure at this point. I am convinced. But other guys like Klosterman, Willick, I think are going to be huge. Gabe, I think that's going to be potentially game breaking. Not going to lie to you. Other things here, obviously, like I said, Kyle, probably not going to be long term. Looks like potentially a leg strain week to week. And on the Jace Gilbert front, hopeful to get him back by the end of the season is the quote that I have here. Jontez Williams seems like he dinged his foot up, a little bit of a bruise, but he's totally fine, not injured, is the quote that I have from Campbell on that front. Now, as far as the team's mental standpoint coming off of the bye, they took the last week, not this current week, the last week, to really focus on themselves. Take a look at what are we doing? What can we do better? Basically take a look at the film, have a couple hard practices, move on, get through that week. Now we're looking at Arizona, which I like. I like that. You can have coaches worrying about Arizona the entire time, but let's really have the team focus in on what can we do better up until this point. Where can we tune up as a team? Not necessarily from the game plan standpoint against Arizona. No. Where did we miss blocking assignments? Where did we misread a hole? Where did we not play the right option route? Where did we, maybe make the wrong audible call if it's Rocco Becht? On the defensive side, where did we not, fill fast enough? I want to see the linebackers getting downhill. Where did they not quite do that? Where did they play a little bit softer? Where can we turn up the intensity? Those kinds of questions. Those are all answered last week. I like that. I like that mental crispness because Matt Campbell did talk about, he said 70% of Power 5 teams lose coming out of the bye. Look, you got to win this one. That's how I look at this. You have to win this one if you're Iowa State. I think that this is a prove-it game for Arizona. I think this is a semi-prove-it game for Iowa State, or at least it is a lot more of a prove-it game than I thought it was going into the season. You've got to get this one. And so you can't be a part of that 70%. And he said it's because it's tough to maintain habits. I don't just maintain the habits. That's how I'm looking at this. Like, you guys are a very competent football team. If we're going to be at that next level, that's part of it, especially with a team like Iowa State, which I don't want to say this, but I don't think you can disagree with me. Iowa State doesn't have the talent of a top-tier SEC school. It just doesn't. I don't think bar for bar Iowa State hangs. So you got to really lock in on the fundamentals, the culture. Fundamentals were revisited as well. I didn't even mention that. I don't even know if I have it written down here. Oh, right here. But can regain fundamentals. He said that we really got towards the end of that 4-week stretch, you don't really revisit the fundamentals quite to the same extent. During the bye week, we can really do that. Now, I am going to pivot away from this. I know that we left a little bit on the table there, but we got to talk about it. I am seeing and I am hearing that Tamin Lipsey will be out 4 to 6 weeks, likely with he is likely going to be sidelined 4 to 6 weeks with a grade 2 MCL sprain. I'm throwing this at the very tail end of today's show. If you're watching this and you had someone else who watches, they might have bailed out early, send them this. Tamin Lipsey, 4 to 6 weeks, grade 2 MCL sprain. Not what I want to hear, considering the first game is November 3rd in 6 weeks. And I know that we've dealt with this to just no end with Tamin Lipsey. The guy fights harder than I think a lot of UFC fighters even at this point. This isn't ideal for the team. I'm not even going to cut this cake 2 different ways. It really isn't great. Hopefully we can get him back to full strength, and honestly, don't even play him until like Christmas, right? Like, just literally bring him back at the new year and try to get this guy healthy. Now, I know it's not fair to Tamin, obviously not what we're going to do, but come on. We need this guy on the team, especially this year. Very, very important. So what are your thoughts, not only on Arizona, but the Tamin Lipsey situation? Need to know down below in the comment section or at Nick_Marv on Twitter. We're really building a community here. I'm really vibing with this. Shout out to every single one of you guys who make it to this point in the episode. You guys are the GOAT. Tamin Lipsey, get better soon. I mean it. Kyle Conradi, soon. This is very important, guys. I mean it. Reach out to me. I'll help any way I can. That being said, until next time, Cyclone fans, sign up.